In the arid hills of Guanajuato, there stands a convent the Church has tried to erase from history for over 3 centuries. Recently declassified Vatican documents reveal an order dated 1943, a command forbidding any excavation beneath its central altar. 3 nuns died there under inexplicable circumstances, and Spanish records conceal a scandal involving royal blood and a secret so dark it permanently altered the colonial policies of Spain. But before we uncover the secrets hidden among the hills of Guanajuato, if you've made it this far, subscribe and join this elite circle of mystery investigators. And tell us, from which country or city are you listening to us tonight? Do you dare to face what we're about to reveal? To understand what truly happened in that lost convent, we must go back to the beginning. The year was 1678, a turbulent time in New Spain. The silver mines of Guanajuato were producing unimaginable wealth for the Spanish crown, while small communities spread across the hills like drops of oil on ancient parchment. Among those settlements, one stood out for its peculiar blend of people: San Miguel de las Cruces, a village of barely 300 souls. Spanish miners, Creole merchants, and indigenous families who had embraced the Catholic faith all lived together under the watchful eyes of a small adobe and stone church. Its thick volcanic walls kept the air cool beneath the burning Mexican sun. The parish priest, Father Francisco Mendoza, a 50-year-old civilian, administered the sacraments with the calm devotion typical of missionaries of that era. On Sundays, his sermons echoed among wooden beams as the faithful, dressed in their finest clothes, filled the carved pews crafted by local artisans. But in April 1678, the peaceful rhythm of San Miguel de las Cruces was interrupted by the arrival of a royal messenger, Don Sebastián de Quiroga, sent directly by the Viceroy of New Spain. He came with a retinue of 20 armed men and several architects carrying blueprints sealed with a royal crest. The official purpose of his visit: to supervise the construction of a new convent in the northern hills, a sanctuary for missionaries traveling toward the remote frontiers of the colony. The townspeople watched with curiosity and reverence as the workers from Mexico City began clearing the chosen site. It was an odd place for a convent, a rocky plateau 3 kilometers from the village, reachable only by a winding path that became impassable during the rainy season. The architects worked with military precision, following plans kept hidden beneath wax canvas. Only the master builder, a silent man named Tomás de Alcántara, was allowed to consult them. What the villagers didn't know was that, at the same time, a financial transaction without precedent was being recorded in Madrid's royal archives. King Charles II of Spain had personally authorized the expenditure of 40,000 gold ducats for the convent's construction, a sum equal to the annual budget of 3 entire Spanish provinces. The documents, signed in the king's own hand, instructed that the funds be used with absolute discretion, and that no ecclesiastical authority was to be informed. As the works progressed through the summer of 1678, a ship arrived in Veracruz from Cadiz carrying a very unusual cargo: 5 nuns from the Order of the Sisters of Charity, officially destined for the convent of Santa Clara in Puebla. Yet the shipping records preserved in port archives contained a disturbing anomaly. One of the passengers, Sister María de la Soledad, appeared in no official registry of the Sisters of Charity. Her documentation had been issued directly by the personal secretary of King Charles II, bearing a papal seal that, according to later Vatican investigations in 1943, had never actually been issued by the Holy See. On September 15, 1678, a date that would centuries later become Mexico's Independence Day. The Convent of San Miguel de las Cruces was inaugurated with a ceremony described by chroniclers as astonishingly grand for such a remote place. Father Mendoza himself officiated the inaugural Mass, though his personal writings, discovered in 1962 in the parish cellar, reveal his unease about the strange instructions he had received from the diocese. "I must confess," he wrote in his private diary, "the orders from Mexico seem most peculiar. I have been told the convent shall function in complete autonomy, with no diocesan oversight, and that no outside priest may celebrate Mass there without written permission from the viceroy. This contradicts every ecclesiastical protocol I know. Yet, who am I to question the will of our superiors?" The convent's architecture drew attention from the very beginning. Unlike most religious buildings of its time, its main altar stood directly above a vast underground crypt. The original plans, sealed until 1943, revealed that the crypt was large enough to hold up to 50 bodies, an absurd number for a community of only 10 residents. And soon after, Sister María de la Soledad, the mysterious nun with irregular papers, was appointed Mother Superior of the convent. Sister María de la Soledad, the nun with the irregular papers, quickly became the superior mother of the small convent. Her companions, Sisters Esperanza, Catalina, Beatriz, and Carmen, respected her deeply, though later testimonies gathered by the Holy Office revealed unsettling details about her behavior. Sister Maria, one of them, would testify years later in a secret inquiry of 1691, spent long hours in the crypt, especially on nights when there was no moon. When we asked what she did down there, she would only reply, "I pray for the souls that will soon rest in this place." During the autumn of 1678, the villagers of San Miguel de las Cruces began to notice subtle but disturbing changes in the convent's routine. At first, the nuns had descended to the village every week to distribute food and medicine to the poor. Then, their visits stopped altogether. The bells of the convent, which had always rung 6 times a day to mark the canonical hours, began to toll at irregular intervals, especially during the darkest hours before dawn. Maria Gonzalez, a washerwoman who came weekly to collect the sisters' laundry, testified years later before the Inquisition. "They used to speak with me kindly," she said, "but starting that November, Sister Maria told me to leave the clean clothes at the door and take the dirty ones without entering. The few times I saw the other sisters, they looked different, as if they had aged years in only a few weeks." Then came the night that changed everything. On November 23, 1678, the villagers of San Miguel were awakened by the sound of the convent's bells, ringing frenetically, relentlessly, for more than 2 hours. The tolling was so desperate and wild that dogs howled until sunrise, and infants cried without consolation until the bells finally went silent. The following morning, Father Mendoza led a small group up the narrow path to investigate. When they reached the convent, the doors stood wide open, swaying gently in the highland wind. Sister Maria de la Soledad greeted them with a calm smile, a smile that Father Mendoza would later describe in his writings as the most disturbing expression I had seen in 50 years of ministry. Her explanation was simple. They had been, she claimed, celebrating a special vigil of Thanksgiving, and the strong wind had made the bells sound louder than expected. But something in her tone, too rehearsed, too serene, filled the priest with quiet dread. At the time, no one dared question her. Yet the truth of what really happened that night would only begin to surface years later, when fragments of royal archives in Madrid were finally opened during the Bourbon reforms of the late 17th century. The months following that strange night of the bells marked the beginning of a sinister transformation within the convent of San Miguel de las Cruces. The five sisters, once known for their disciplined rhythm of prayers and charitable works, began to exhibit behaviors that fueled unsettling rumors throughout the region. During the winter of 1679, several merchants passing along the mountain road toward the silver mines reported disturbing sights around the convent at night. Esteban Morales, a mule driver from Zacatecas, claimed to have seen moving lights circling the building, like a silent procession of candles, though the hour was long past midnight, when all nuns should have been asleep. But the most chilling testimony came from Don Rodrigo de Villarreal, a royal official en route to the Valenciana mines, whose statement would later haunt colonial authorities for decades. One February night, caught in a sudden storm that turned the mountain path into a river of mud, Don Rodrigo sought refuge at the convent gates. His account, preserved in the municipal archives of Guanajuato, reads like a page torn from a nightmare. "Sister Maria received me courteously," he wrote, "but something felt wrong from the very moment I stepped inside. The other sisters remained utterly silent, their faces hidden beneath their veils, even indoors. During supper, which consisted only of bread and water, I noticed that Sister Esperanza's hands were wrapped in bandages, as though she had recently been burned. When I asked if there had been an accident, Sister Maria smiled faintly and said they were stigmata of devotion. But her eyes warned me not to ask again." That night, Don Rodrigo was awakened by voices. They came from beneath the floor, from the direction of the crypt, low, rhythmic chanting in ancient Latin, though not the kind used in Catholic liturgy. He rose quietly and followed the sound to the door leading underground. From behind it came the distinct noise of earth being shoveled, as if someone were digging. The next morning, he left at first light without saying goodbye. When he reached the village, he went straight to the alcalde, the local magistrate, and filed a report. Within weeks, whispers of heresy and forbidden rites began to spread across the highlands. The colonial authorities, uneasy about the implications, decided to act discreetly. Father Mendoza was instructed to document every visit he made to the convent, however ordinary it might seem. And so he did. In March of 1679 he wrote, "The crypt has been altered. Its size is no longer the same as it was when the convent was inaugurated. It now extends eastward, and the walls show fresh marks of excavation. When I questioned Sister Maria, she claimed they had found natural chambers beneath the altar and decided to incorporate them into the sacred space. But something in her eyes told me she was lying." More troubling still were the signs of nocturnal visitors. Horse tracks along the winding path, boot prints of military style in the courtyard, remnants of meals for more than 5 people, even though the convent housed only 5 nuns. The final confirmation of these suspicions came unexpectedly in April 1679, when a Franciscan friar named Fray Antonio de la Cruz, traveling to Guatemala, sought shelter at the convent during a storm. His testimony, sent directly to the Holy Office in Mexico City, described a scene that forever changed the official perception of what was happening in the hills of Guanajuato. "I arrived near 10 o'clock at night," he wrote. "The place was alive with activity, highly unusual for that hour. Several torches illuminated the courtyard, and I counted at least 8 horses tied near the main entrance. Sister Maria greeted me with visible nervousness and led me quickly to a cell in the north wing, instructing me not to leave until dawn, out of respect for the sisters' nocturnal prayers. Around midnight, I heard multiple male voices in the courtyard, conversing in the distinct Castilian accents of Spain, not the Creole tones common in New Spain. The talking continued until nearly 3 in the morning, followed by the sound of horses galloping away into the night. When dawn came, Sister Maria escorted me out. I noticed she was wearing rings of gold and precious stones, and a necklace that glimmered beneath her veil, jewels that no nun should possess. These converging testimonies left the authorities no choice but to act. An official inquiry was ordered, one that would uncover truths darker than anyone could have imagined. The official investigation into the convent of San Miguel de las Cruces began in May 1679, when the Holy Office of Mexico received a sealed directive from the Council of the Indies in Madrid. The order was simple, yet chilling. Examine the activities of the religious community in the hills of Guanajuato with utmost discretion. But as later revealed by documents declassified in 1943, the investigation was sabotaged from the very beginning. The appointed inquisitor, Francisco de Aparicio, encountered obstacles at every step. His requests for access to the convent's financial records were denied by direct command of the viceroy. His attempts to interrogate the nuns were blocked under the pretext of an indefinite spiritual retreat. And when he finally obtained a royal warrant to inspect the premises, the convent was empty. On June 18, 1679, wrote Inquisitor Aparicio in his final report, I arrived at the convent accompanied by 2 notaries and a clerk, only to find that the 5 sisters had vanished during the previous night. There were no signs of struggle or forced departure. They had simply disappeared. Their personal belongings were gone, yet the altar remained intact, the sacred vessels in place, the candles burned halfway, as if a mass had been interrupted. What they did find deepened the mystery rather than solved it. The underground crypt, which had been steadily expanded over the past months, now reached nearly 10 feet below the altar. It contained tunnels stretching in multiple directions, freshly dug and lined with stones blackened by candle smoke. And in one of those newly carved chambers, the Inquisitor found something that froze his blood. A forged iron chest, sealed with the royal crest of Spain. Inside were documents, so sensitive that Aparicio's report stated they required direct consultation with His Majesty. The exact contents of those documents remained classified for more than 2 centuries. Only in the mid-19th century, during the liberal reforms that forced partial declassification of colonial archives, would their secrets finally be revealed. What they contained rewrote the very history of the Spanish Empire. The papers revealed a network of corruption and conspiracy stretching from the heart of Madrid to the silver veins of Guanajuato. Sister Maria de la Soledad was no nun at all. Her real name was María Enríquez de Guzmán, the illegitimate daughter of King Charles II of Spain, a lady of the royal court whose existence had been carefully erased from the genealogical records of the crown. Her story began years earlier, in 1675, when the 17-year-old María Enríquez was discovered to be romantically involved with Don Luis de la Cerda, the powerful Duke of Medinaceli, one of the most influential nobles in all of Spain. The scandal threatened to destroy the delicate alliances that King Charles had spent years cultivating to preserve Spain's crumbling dominance in Europe. The royal solution was swift and merciless. By order of the king's personal secretary, Maria was secretly sent to New Spain under a false religious identity, to live out her days in quiet isolation until the scandal was forgotten. But María Enríquez had other plans. Using her position as Mother Superior, she began orchestrating a smuggling network, siphoning silver directly from the Guanajuato mines into secret accounts in Spain. The mysterious night visitors were not pilgrims. They were corrupt officials of the colonial administration, part of a sophisticated operation that turned the convent into a hub of illicit trade. The crypt beneath the altar was no burial site. It was a vault, a staging ground where silver bars were stored before being shipped through Veracruz on vessels disguised as carrying religious goods. The scheme was vast. Within less than a year, María Enríquez had diverted over 200,000 gold ducats, the equivalent of an entire province's treasury. And the most shocking revelation: King Charles II himself had authorized the cover-up. Among the documents found in the iron chest was a royal letter, handwritten and signed by the king, dated March 1679. It contained a chilling instruction. If the Holy Office uncovers the true nature of the convent's activities, Maria and her associates are to be transferred immediately to a safe location. The archives must be destroyed. Any witness possessing compromising knowledge is to be permanently silenced. This letter explained the sudden disappearance of the 5 women and cast a dark light on the events that were to follow. For Inquisitor Aparicio's findings were only the beginning of a cover-up that would echo for centuries. The hunt for María Enríquez de Guzmán and her 4 accomplices became one of the most secret operations in colonial history. Declassified documents from 1943 revealed its code name, Operation Sacramento, a mission whose primary objective was chillingly clear: to eliminate every trace of royal involvement in the Guanajuato smuggling affair. At first, the fugitives were easy to trace. Agents of the Crown discovered that María Enríquez had used her knowledge of trade routes between Guanajuato and Veracruz to design a strategic escape route, stopping at remote haciendas owned by corrupt officials complicit in her network. Each safe house provided food, shelter, and horses, keeping the trail alive but just out of reach. But soon, the investigation uncovered something even more disturbing. Maria was not acting alone within the royal bloodline. Among her night visitors at the convent had been Don Fernando de Austria, the bastard nephew of King Charles II, who secretly governed a vast web of corruption stretching from Mexico to the Philippines. As Inspector General of Mines, Don Fernando had used his position to facilitate the smuggling of silver to European accounts. And Maria, ever meticulous, had kept written records of his every transaction. In her crypt beneath the altar, investigators found signed orders authorizing the transport of religious materials, which were, in truth, purified silver bars. The situation spiraled beyond control when royal agents realized that María Enríquez had prepared a contingency plan, a final safeguard to ensure her survival if captured. She had secretly sent copies of all compromising documents to a contact in Rome, with explicit instructions. If she failed to send a coded message of safety every 6 months, the papers were to be delivered to the Pope himself. The implications were catastrophic. One royal dispatch to the Viceroy of New Spain, written in cipher, read, "The threat María Enríquez poses to the stability of the crown is greater than we imagined. Her disappearance must appear accidental, and the documents in Rome must be recovered before they reach His Holiness. Should they be revealed, the alliances of Spain will collapse for generations." The pursuit dragged southward through the mountains of Michoacán, where Maria established temporary refuge in several convents, using falsified papers provided by sympathetic officials. Each time, the fugitives stayed only long enough to prepare shipments of silver, hidden among crates labeled as religious supplies. But in August 1679, the hunt came to a head. Before dawn on August 15th, a combined force of royal agents and inquisitorial officers surrounded the convent of Santa Monica, just outside Puebla. They expected to capture Maria and her companions as they slept. Instead, they found something far worse. The convent was completely silent, a silence so deep it was described as inhuman. The doors hung open, swaying softly in the wind. No voices, no movement. The horses were still in the stables, but their saddles, gear, and provisions were gone. Every candle still burned. Meals sat half-eaten on the tables, still warm. The women had vanished again. But in the main chapel, investigators found the most chilling evidence yet. The altar had been systematically desecrated. Religious icons were turned to face the wall, sacred objects removed, and carved deep into the stone of the altar was an inscription, words that sent terror through the hearts of every man present. The truth shall remain hidden until royal blood pays for its sins. What lies buried in Guanajuato shall be revealed when Spain falls. María Enríquez de Guzmán shall live in the shadows until divine justice prevails. Beneath the message, engraved with surgical precision, was a symbol no one could identify. An inverted cross surrounded by 5 concentric circles, each containing strange markings unlike any alphabet known in Europe. The agents fled the chapel in silence. But they knew this was not over, because what they had uncovered was not merely a scandal of greed or lust, but a secret that reached across kingdoms and would soon threaten to tear apart the very foundations of the Spanish Empire. The inscription on the altar of Santa Monica became the key that unlocked the true scope of María Enríquez's conspiracy. For months, royal cryptographers struggled to decipher the strange symbol carved beneath her message, the inverted cross surrounded by 5 circles, each etched with unfamiliar characters. It was unlike any language known in Europe. Desperate for answers, the Council of the Indies summoned one of the most brilliant codebreakers of his time, Don Alfonso de Mendoza, a scholar brought from Madrid to New Spain. For 3 weeks, he pored over sketches of the inscription, comparing the markings to known military ciphers used during the religious wars in Europe. Finally, he broke the code. The result horrified everyone. "These are not the ravings of superstition," Don Alfonso wrote in his report. "They are part of a French cipher system, the same used by espionage networks during the wars of religion. The message contains coordinates, shipment codes, and references to financial transactions between agents operating in Mexico and contacts in Paris." In short, María Enríquez de Guzmán had been working as an agent of the French crown. The diversion of silver was not simply for personal enrichment, but part of a larger plan to destabilize Spain's colonial economy, weaken its military strength, and cripple its influence across Europe. The news struck Madrid like a thunderbolt. The idea that the illegitimate daughter of the King of Spain had been secretly feeding information to France was nothing short of treason, not merely against the crown, but against God himself. King Charles II, already haunted by the shadow of madness and the decline of his empire, ordered an immediate and absolute response. A secret tribunal of his closest advisers was convened to decide the fate of Maria and her accomplices. The verdict was unanimous and merciless. "They are to be eliminated quietly. All related documents are to be destroyed or sealed under perpetual secrecy. No trace of this affair must survive. But the execution of that order would reveal horrors even darker than the crime itself. After weeks of pursuit, the royal agents finally located María Enríquez and her companions on September 3, 1679. They were hiding in a deserted hacienda deep in the mountains between Puebla and Veracruz, a crumbling fortress transformed into something far more sinister. Inside, investigators discovered a scene that defied belief. The hacienda had been converted into a command center. In one room, a secret printing press was found, used to produce counterfeit documents for other espionage cells. Another chamber contained alchemical instruments for refining silver with unnaturally high purity. And beneath the building, in a hidden underground chamber, the agents found 7 bodies. All were Spanish colonial officials, reported missing over the previous 8 months. Each had been tortured with precision, the marks matching interrogation methods known to have been used only in the French Inquisition's secret prisons. The commander of the operation wrote in his final report, "María Enríquez is not merely a traitor. She is a trained assassin, methodical and unflinching. The techniques used here could only have been learned in France. She has eliminated every man who might have uncovered her true identity." When the royal forces surrounded the hacienda at dawn, Maria and her 4 surviving sisters did not flee. They fought, fiercely, strategically, as though they had prepared for this very moment. Gunfire shattered the morning silence. The nuns, armed with muskets and pistols, defended the stone corridors with deadly accuracy. The air filled with smoke and screams. Every corridor became a trap, corridors laced with explosives, walls hiding concealed passages, windows rigged with gunpowder flasks. It was not a convent anymore. It was a fortress of defiance. At the height of the battle, Maria triggered the largest of her charges. The explosion ripped through the east wing, killing 3 royal agents instantly and engulfing the building in flame. But amid the chaos, something unexpected was revealed. A tunnel leading deep into the mountains. The surviving soldiers pursued, torchlight flickering across the jagged rock. The tunnel opened into a network of natural caves, where Maria had built her final refuge, stocked with provisions, weapons, and documents. And it was there that the agents made their most devastating discovery yet. Within those caves lay copies of every document she had stolen, including secret correspondence between King Charles II and French officials, revealing that the monarch himself had been secretly negotiating a possible alliance with France, a betrayal that could destroy Spain from within. The commander's next dispatch, encoded and sent directly to Madrid, read, "We have found proof of treason beyond María Enríquez herself. The King of Spain has maintained secret communications with King Louis XIV of France regarding a redistribution of the American colonies. Maria's network was not acting against royal orders, it was protecting them. For the men in those caves, the realization was unbearable. They were no longer pursuing a rogue nun. They were burying the sins of their own king. The orders that came next were simple and absolute. Eliminate all witnesses. Destroy every trace. This case never existed." The pursuit ended deep beneath the mountains, in a labyrinth of caves where María Enríquez de Guzmán had made her final stand. The air inside was cold, thick with the smell of gunpowder and burning tallow. The flickering torches of the royal agents revealed a hidden sanctuary, walls carved with Latin prayers mingled with symbols of alchemy and French ciphers, an unholy fusion of faith and treason. At the heart of that cavern, surrounded by her 4 remaining companions, stood Maria, pale, defiant, her black habit torn and streaked with soot. She no longer looked like a nun. She looked like the ghost of a fallen queen. When the soldiers demanded her surrender, she laughed, a sound that echoed through the stone like a curse. "I can give you everything you came for," she shouted from behind a barricade of rocks. "All the documents that prove your king's betrayal. In exchange, grant me safe passage to France. But if you kill me here, my allies in Paris will deliver those same documents to the Pope and to the ambassadors of England and Austria. Then your king, your entire empire, will drown in disgrace." The soldiers hesitated. They had been ordered to capture her alive, if possible, but now they understood. Killing her might be the only way to protect Spain. Then one of the nuns, later identified as Sister Esperanza, the same woman who had once bandaged her hands with holy stigmata, stepped forward and spoke. Her words would later appear in the inquisitorial transcripts, found centuries later among the Vatican archives. "His Holiness already knows. I sent my journal to Rome months ago. It contains proof that King Charles used the funds of the Church to finance espionage against France. The Pope is preparing a bull of excommunication. If the crown does not confess, it will be damned." That single sentence shattered the illusion of control. If true, the Pope could turn the Church itself against the Spanish monarchy. Revolt would spread through the colonies. France would march on Spain with divine sanction. The commander of the royal forces, a man named Coronel Alarcón, made the decision that would haunt him until his death. "Seal every exit," he ordered. "Divert the river. Flood the caves." The operation began at dawn. Men armed with pickaxes and shovels redirected the nearby stream into the cavern system. For 3 full days, the water rose, cold, relentless, unstoppable. The soldiers stood in silence as the cries of the trapped women echoed from below. Their screams grew faint, then vanished beneath the sound of rushing water. The flood of silence, as later generations called it, marked the official end of Operation Sacramento. The caves were sealed, their entrances collapsed by explosives. Every man who took part in the mission was sworn to eternal secrecy under penalty of death. Each was paid the equivalent of 10 years' wages, and given written orders never to speak of what they had done. But the horror did not end there. Documents revealed that those soldiers knew they were not executing heretics. They were murdering witnesses under the king's command. For King Charles II himself had signed the directive that sealed his daughter's tomb. The flood erased not only lives, but history itself. The truth, drowned beneath layers of stone and guilt, would remain hidden for more than 3 centuries. Yet the silence was not perfect. In the months that followed, 8 witnesses connected to the case, priests, servants, and informants, died under mysterious circumstances. Each death ruled accidental, each perfectly timed. Among them was Father Francisco Mendoza, the priest who had first sounded the alarm. In his final diary entry, hidden inside the church walls and rediscovered in 1962, he wrote, "I have counted 8 deaths in 6 months. Every person who spoke of the convent is gone. I fear I am next. May God forgive Spain for what it has done." He was found dead 3 weeks later. The official cause, heart failure. The truth, poison, the same silent weapon that had erased the others. Thus ended the bloodline of María Enríquez de Guzmán, the daughter the king denied, the spy the Church condemned, the ghost the Empire buried beneath its own sins. But her story refused to die. Because secrets, like bones, have a way of resurfacing. The flooded caves of Guanajuato marked the end of Operation Sacramento, but the beginning of a cover-up that would endure for more than 300 years. According to documents unsealed in 1943, the Spanish crown launched a systematic campaign of erasure, designed to wipe the convent of San Miguel de las Cruces from history itself. First came the fabrication of an official narrative. The records of the Holy Office were altered to claim that the 5 nuns of San Miguel had been transferred to a convent in Guatemala, where they allegedly died of yellow fever in 1680. To sustain the lie, the crown bribed colonial officials to forge death certificates, build false tombs in a Guatemala city cemetery, and invent eyewitnesses who testified that the sisters perished during the epidemic. The total cost of this deception, more than 50,000 gold ducats, hidden in military budgets under fortification maintenance. But that was only the beginning. In the 6 months following the flood, every person connected to the case began to die. 8 witnesses, from royal envoys to simple villagers, perished in what official reports described as accidents: a fall from a horse, a sudden fever, food poisoning at a parish feast, each death perfectly timed to silence another voice. And Father Mendoza, the priest who had kept the first record of the convent's strange behavior, became the final casualty. His secret journal, discovered in 1962 behind the crumbling walls of his parish, revealed a fear that consumed him before his end. The pattern is too perfect to be coincidence. They are removing everyone who knows. When they come for me, I pray that whoever finds these pages will also find the truth buried beneath our church. He was right to be afraid. 3 weeks later, his body was found. The autopsy listed heart failure. The truth, according to later analysis, was slow poison. Meanwhile, in Madrid, King Charles II used the scandal to transform colonial policy. He established new systems of surveillance for officials handling sensitive information, created tighter verification for all religious orders traveling overseas, and, most tellingly, suspended his secret correspondence with France. Historians now believe this decision may have changed the entire map of Europe. Had those negotiations continued, the War of the Spanish Succession might never have happened. The convent of San Miguel de las Cruces was officially closed in October 1679, barely a year after its consecration. Its land was sold to a local landowner who, though richly rewarded, never dared to use it. The building decayed beneath the harsh sun and shifting sands until only ruins remained, stone skeletons swallowed by time. Yet among the people of Guanajuato, the legend never died. For centuries, locals spoke of ghostly nuns seen wandering the hills on moonless nights, of bells that tolled without hands to ring them, and of cursed treasure buried beneath the old convent's altar. Folk stories mingled with fragments of truth, preserving what official records tried to erase. It wasn't until the 19th century liberal reforms, when Mexico and Spain began opening their colonial archives, that historians stumbled upon references to a forbidden convent in Guanajuato. But even then, the church blocked access to key documents, claiming they were too sensitive to release. The real turning point came in 1943. During the chaos of World War II, the Vatican reluctantly opened sections of its archives to Allied intelligence, hoping to track Nazi espionage in Latin America. In that process, investigators uncovered an entirely different file. A bundle of parchment bearing the royal seal of Spain, marked sub rosa. Under the rose. Inside were the lost reports of Inquisitor Aparicio, the royal correspondence between Charles II and his ministers, and the confessions of those who had survived the early stages of the cover-up. The story of María Enríquez de Guzmán, the illegitimate daughter of the king, the nun who became a spy, and the woman who nearly brought down an empire, was finally revealed to the world. Scholars debated the authenticity of the documents for decades, but the ruins in Guanajuato remained silent and accusing. Beneath 3 centuries of soil, the sealed crypt still lies undisturbed, its stones hiding the drowned vault where the silver was stored, and perhaps the bones of those who were sacrificed to keep a secret royal sin. The Vatican still keeps certain papers classified, insisting they contain diplomatic material that could damage modern relations between church and state. But independent researchers suspect a different reason, that those pages contain evidence of corruption within the highest ranks of the 17th century church itself. And so, the hills of Guanajuato remain haunted, not by spirits, but by the weight of truth buried beneath centuries of silence. Because history, like water, always finds a way to surface. How many other stories lie entombed in forgotten archives? How many convents, churches, and cathedrals guard secrets that could rewrite the past? And how many people have died, not for power, but for silence? Perhaps that is the true curse of the convent of San Miguel de las Cruces. Not the ghosts, not the sin, but the certainty that even the holiest institutions can bleed.